Hello. So now we're going to go over the right house, right? We're going to go over this one, right? We're first going to start by talking about these two tents, right? So starting with the bookshelf tent, basically the most common thing to see here is to see a bookshelf directly touching another bookshelf on the same layer. So notice it's directly touching this bookshelf if there's a hider right here. So that's how you know it's fake. It's directly touching this bookshelf on the same layer. Same thing here, right? Directly touching another bookshelf on the same layer, right there. Same thing here, directly touching another bookshelf on the same layer, right there. Same thing here, instead it's two bookshelves, right? Touching this one and this one. So really easy to just know those spots, right? You should never see a bookshelf directly touching another bookshelf on the same layer, right? So it's pretty easy to identify those ones. The other spots you need to know about, right, is if you see the central bookshelf completely surrounded by four total, basically a bookshelf right here would be fake. But you should also never see three bookshelves on top of each other like this or like this, right? You also shouldn't see a bookshelf like this either, sort of in the back right here. That's basically it for the bookshelf stack. Going over to this tent, we have a much simpler structure, right? Basically, there's a missing piece, right? A flower pot usually will hide here. Sometimes a melon will choose to be there instead, right? Just like for the first table that we went over in the first tent, you can find a hider behind the tent as well. So that's pretty much it. We're going to talk about this tent at the beginning of the video since it's typically the last spot I check when checking the back of the map. So now we're going to focus more on the house. As for the front over here, pigs actually spawn in this farmland region, and they tend to roam around a lot because... And there's about 7 pigs. I don't know the exact number, but I'm pretty sure it's 7. Right, but you should always hit pigs that are around here. Right, chickens spawn right next to them. They spawn in this region. I think there's like 4 or 5. I think it's 5. I don't know. Basically, I just hit them as I pass by. Okay. So, alright, so let's just look at some of the features we have here. Now, in the farmland itself, we actually do have a cauldron. Sometimes you'll find flower pots in it. Obviously, it's fake. Right? There's a little hole right here a hider can hide at. Right? And before we talk about the inside of the house, let's talk about this TNT stack. As for the TNT stack, there's quite a few spots you can see. One of them, probably the most important one to know about, is if you see 3 TNTs in a row. You see 2 TNTs in a row on the side of the stack, for instance, like this, or like this is fake. Right? Just like that. Or if you see 2 TNTs on top of each other specifically for this one, that would be fake. Right? Just like that. Right? If you see 2 TNTs in a row like this, it's fake. Basically, wherever you see 2 or 3 TNTs in a row, that's how you know it's fake. Again, 2 TNTs in a row. It's also squared off, so it's another way to think about it. In this case, it's 2 TNTs in a row on the top of the stack, right? That's another way to think about it, right? Now, the other thing you should notice about the TNT stack is that there's 2 TNTs sticking out. So you should never see 1 TNT sticking out. For instance, like this, or like this. Right, so that would be fake. Right? Just like that. I like doing that. Okay, that's basically it for the TNT stack. Right, now let's actually go to the inside of this building. For the inside of this building, it's basically, this is the downstairs. There's actually not as many spots as you think in this room. For the counter over here, near the window, you have a single melon and a single flower pot. So you should never see 2 flower pots. So something like this would be fake. Right, or a flower pot right here as well. You should also never see 2 melons, for instance, like 2 in a row. That would be fake. For the note blocks, right, the typical spot, you'll typically only see this one. Right, 2 note blocks on top of each other would be fake. For the furnaces, the only spot you'll typically see is a furnace right here. Right, sometimes a furnace will be right here, but that usually never happens. Right, for these bookshelves, it turns out there's only really 2 possible spots for a hider to become solid, which is if you see a pattern go 2-2 or 1-3. Those are really the only things you need to know for the bookshelves. Right? Any other spot, like for instance right here, they don't even become solid because of the carpet. Right? Also, the same thing happens here. Right? And right next to it as well. Right? You typically don't see a bookshelf go here, but obviously that would be fake. It's basically it for the bookshelves. We actually do have cauldrons over here, but this is the same common structure we saw back in the museum with the cells. Right? If you see, so again, if you see like 2 cauldrons in a row, or staircase of cauldrons, it would be fake. And find hiders hiding inside the cauldrons as well. For the melons, it's basically just a total of 2 melons, but it may not be super obvious that there's more than 2 melons if there's a melon hiding right here. So you should just kind of memorize this spot. Since like as you enter the room, it's not super obvious. You can't really see that third melon that easily. So you just gotta memorize this spot. Now, this is interesting. This is all wood, right? But this is the top of a bookshelf. So really, you could find investors investing in that bookshelf, because if you go to the downstairs, that's really the top of the bookshelf. There should be no blocks anywhere on this layer, so no flower pots at all. But many times you'll find flower pots and even random blocks on it. Now, if you go up to the top, just like for the left house, you can find hiders in the top right here. Sometimes you'll find flower pots in this hole with the leaves. Now, inside the attic, you typically don't find any hiders in here at all, unless they're infestors or non-ideal hiders. So I'm not even going to worry about these block piles, since you typically don't find any hiders in these stacks. So that's basically it for the contents inside and on top of the building. Next, we're going to go over the stuff over here. But one thing I should mention is that hiders can actually get on top of all of these trees. It's pretty easy to check them. They're really small trees. So yeah, it's really important. Hiders can get on top of all of those trees. Right, as for these furnaces, basically there's a few spots you just kind of need to know. Right, basically it's, if you ever see a furnace directly touching another furnace on the same layer, it's basically the same exact thing for the bookshelf tent over there that we went over in the beginning of the video. Right, if you ever see a furnace directly touching another furnace, actually technically you'd be looking for 2 in a row or 3 in a row. In this case, 2 in a row. Let's see, 1, 2. Right, 1, 2 in a row. In this case, also 2 in a row. It would be fake. In this case, 3 in a row. It would be fake. Right, in this case, again, 2 in a row. 2 in a row. 2 in a row. That's really what you're looking for. Right? Also, if you see like 2 furnaces on top of each other like this, again, it sort of makes a square of furnaces. You should never see a square in the structure. So square, it's fake. Notice it formed a square like that. It's fake. Again, it's a square, it's fake. Again, it's a square, it's fake. Just like that. Or if the furnace goes too high up. So it's really easy if you just kind of know those 2 things. That's pretty much it. Next, we have this bookshelf stack. The bookshelf stack is actually also really easy because there's basically 4 corners to it which are not filled. You just gotta basically make sure that there are no bookshelves in any of these 4 corners right here. Right? So pretty easy if you just know that. And the only other thing is that there are 3 bookshelves on top of the stack. So you can see 4 bookshelves, for instance like this, or like this is what you'll typically see. Then it would be fake. Right, that's pretty much it for the bookshelf stack. Heading over here to the hay bale stack. The most typical spot to find a hay bale is to find a hay bale in this slot. So if you see a hay bale specifically right here, that's how you know it's fake. Now, again, what you're looking for is just like we were talking about for the furnace stack, right? It's basically a hay bale directly touching another hay bale on the same layer. Technically, if there's a hay bale right here, it's directly touching this hay bale. The reason why I'm mentioning this spot is really important, because it's obviously the most common spot to find a hider. But another thing is you might see a hay bale go on top of this one. And so you gotta know this spot as well. So if there's like a hay bale here and a hay bale here, it may not be super obvious. So it's really important that you just memorize this spot. But again, if you see like a hay bale directly touching another hay bale, in this case it's directly touching 2 other hay bales. That's how you know it's fake. Same thing right here, and right here. This is also a common spot to find 2 hay bales in a row in the behind of the stack. So as you see, directly touching another hay bale. Same thing here, directly touching another hay bale on the same layer. The same thing happens right here, right? You're directly touching another hay bale on the same layer, right? It's right here, right? It doesn't really happen right here though, right? But the thing you gotta know is that the hay bale stack has 2 hay bales sticking out. That's just like the TNT stack that we went over right here, right? There's 2 TNT sticking out, right? This hay bale stack should also have 2 hay bales sticking out. So, for instance, if you see a hay bale right here, now there's only 1 sticking out, so that means it's fake. So that's pretty much it for this region, which I call the right house. As you can see, the sheep roam around a lot. But basically, that's pretty much it for this region. Some infestor spots I didn't go over. Well, we talked about the infestor spot with the bookshelf. Infestors could also infest in this cauldron. They could also infest in this furnace in the ground. They could infest in this furnace in the ground. Right? Remember, we talked about these pairs of furnaces in the previous video. And there's another furnace right here. That's pretty much it for this video. I basically have talked about the right house. And so that's pretty much the... Wait, no. We're not done yet. I forgot. We still got to go over this, because I said I was going to go over this at the end of the video. The last tent. As for this tent, right, you can't really use the trick for the bookshelf stack that much, because these cauldrons are directly touching each other, so it doesn't really work that well. You just gotta know that these should be the only two cauldrons directly touching each other on the same layer. So if there's like another cauldron directly touching it, like for instance right here it's fake, again, a cauldron directly touching another cauldron on the same layer, this would be fake, right? Right, you should never see 3 in a row, right? Again, directly touching this cauldron. In this case, same exact thing, right? Directly touching this cauldron on the same layer. Right? The only case where that doesn't happen is if there's a cauldron hiding right here, right? In this case, a cauldron is not directly touching another cauldron on the same layer, so you just kind of have to memorize this spot. The only spot where they should be directly touching each other on the same layer is right here. This should literally, you'll pass by it every single time, so you'll know that this is real. Right? But if you see it anywhere else, for instance right here, or right here, or right here, right? It's directly touching another cauldron on the same layer. That's how you know it's fake. You might even see cauldrons back here, like this. And so that's pretty much it for this video. We have basically talked about the last 3 tents, and we've talked about basically this entire region, which I call the right house. And so that's pretty much the whole idea of it, and that's